has it. Oh, a letter. They're in favor of it. They're against it. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order of our Board of Education. It's Monday, September 20th, 2021. If we could begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Chambers, could you call roll, please?
Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Thank you.
We've got a nice group of attendees tonight. We want to welcome you all out to the board meeting. A couple things before we get into the approval of the minutes and the approval of the additions or modifications to the agenda. Just wanted to go over a couple things. As you came in tonight, there are some rules for participation. These are not new rules. These are rules that are actually in our policies that we've had approved for, and have been modified even this year in May. So these are rules of the game, and we've got them available for you as you come in. The last meeting, there was quite a bit of disruption and so forth. We've done our best to try to have peaceful meetings and to have everybody listen to each other and take turns. One of the things that we will do for people that disrupt and so forth, that don't follow these rules, is we may give you a warning, and after the second warning, we may ask that you be escorted out. And we hate to have to do that, but we do have, this is a meeting of the Board of Education, and this is our meeting. There is a point in the meeting for public comment that we have. Our policies that we have approved have a 30-minute period for public comment. And the way we're going to handle that is the first 10 speakers that have signed up, and I have a list of them, will be the ones called upon. If one of them has left or has changed their mind, when we get to that point, then we'll go to the next one. So at this point, unless in the future we approve a different policy, at this point, it's based on arriving at meetings early and signing up to be a speaker. And because we have 30 minutes, unless somebody just takes 2 minutes, then there might be an extra minute, but generally there'll be 10 speakers at 3 minutes apiece. Now, this is not the only way to contact the school board. As you know, you can email us, you can call us, you can call the administration, and they'll pass on the message to us. There's many ways to get a hold of us, as well as attending meetings, which we're glad you're here. You're always welcome to be here. But these are meetings that we want to keep orderly. There were some things that were said in public comment last time that probably should have been shut down, and I apologize for that, not shutting down sooner, but I'm doing the best I can to help chair this meeting and do what's right for Medina. All of us take our oaths very seriously, and we are doing our best to deal with policies for the district and all the regular business that we have, in addition to why a lot of you may have come out tonight, which is maybe a reason that you're here, if it's masks or COVID or whatever the case may be. So there are a lot of things that we do as a district beyond that. And the other comment I want to make is, again, we want to be respectful. Even if somebody's speaking that you don't agree with, we don't want, clapping and hollering and interrupting. If that happens, that speaker would get more time, and again, we would end up having to request that you leave if you're interrupting this meeting of the Board of Education. So we don't want to do that. We want all of you here, and I'm sorry I have to say that, and that's where we're at. And we don't want congregating in the back. We want everybody to be seated. We want everybody safe. And the fire marshal doesn't allow us to do that. And our police that are here will help us enforce that to make sure that everybody is doing things properly and that we're all on the same page. Also, we do have the ability to stop the mic. So if you're speaking and you're being interrupted, I may stop you. If you start violating our rules, harassing somebody, calling out individuals on the board, I may stop you, and we may terminate that at that point, or you may get a warning. It depends, okay? And so some of you have spoken here before, and so, we'll see how that goes, and hopefully everybody will be respectful, and we don't want you yelling and so forth when you're speaking. We ask that you address the board in a manner that comports with a board meeting, okay? So I know everybody's going to be respectful, I hope. I think Medina is a great community, and I know there's been a lot of work done to prepare for these meetings and to make things accessible. If you've never been to a school board meeting, we have a website for the schools called medinabees.org, and on that website you click on Board of Education, and there is a program called Board Docs. And many years ago, we didn't have this program, and so there would be a 200 or 300 page document, like a PDF, that was sent to the board members, and the public could request that information, but you didn't always have that information. So I would say probably 7 years ago, we adopted Board Docs, so you have the same information that we're looking at as we conduct the board meeting. And one of the things that we did when several of us got on the board back in 2014 was we enacted a public comment before we vote. Now, the last several public participation policies that we adopted do not have that in there, and that is something that I, as a board president, basically am making a decision unless the board objects tonight, which I'd like to hear if you do, but we're going to foreclose that public comment during the voting section. We're just going to do it during the public comment section. And again, our policy doesn't require that. It's not, no other boards do it that we know of in the state. We did it after a period of time where there was something that went on in the district, and we offered that, and For many years, very few people would have a comment. Once in a while, this last time, it extended debate triple, and there wasn't really a need for it at that point. So my recommendation is that we follow the policy and do away with that. Do any of you object to that? We're not voting on it because that's what our policy is now, but I just want to be open with that. So we are not going to open up public comment before we vote on items. We do have public comment in the agenda tonight, and if you notice, it's been moved up before we vote. So if there's something that the board's going to vote on tonight that you see in our agenda that you want to comment on before we vote, that's an item F1, and you would want to be one of the first ones at the board meeting. Or, again, if you aren't going to be able to possibly speak tonight because we only have a half hour for public comment, then you're welcome to email the board. Even as we speak, some of us still get emails during meetings. So you could email the board. We have our email addresses on the website, and it's usually the last name and a first letter at medinabees.org. So you're welcome to do that. Trying to think if there's anything else.
Mr. Skidmore, there's also the Ask the President button on the school website as well that people could utilize if they so wished.
Yes, and we also just created a new email address called boe@medinabees.org. So that'll go to all of us. So there you go. That's another way to contact us, boe@medinabees.org, and that way we'll have that. So we try to acknowledge receipt of your emails. If it's, we've gotten lots of emails, pro-mask, anti-mask. We're not necessarily answering every one of them. We're reading them, and we're indicating we've received it. I know at the last meeting, we debated that, I feel, very extensively, and the public debated that. But anyway, that's where, so we actually did get an email today on a different type of matter with somebody making a sports team. And it was a little bit refreshing that it was something besides masks. So that was good. So anything else, any other comment? Again, this is just about kind of housekeeping items, okay? Hearing none, if we could go ahead and entertain a motion for B1 to approve the minutes.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our August 23rd, 2021 regular meeting and our September 7th work session, 2021.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlik and Mr. Ross. Any clarifications from the board on that, or any additions or removals to that? Hearing none, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Ross? Aye. Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
We have before us an agenda that's been prepared by the district for tonight. Are there any additions, changes, or removals, or anything you would like to have separated out as a board?
Mr. Skidmore, I would like to add an item at the very end, is separate from the consent agenda for the board, an action item regarding masks, please.
Okay. What would be the, you want to phrase that motion now, or how do we do that? Because we haven't usually added, like, you're just adding a topic to discuss, or you're adding an action item?
I'm adding an action item. I'd like to add an action item for the board to consider. I'd like to recommend a full mask mandate for grades K through 12 for indoor use only until the next board meeting in October.
Okay, we have a motion on the table.
I'll second.
To accept the agenda, and we have a second. Okay? Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to clarify, so the motion and the second, so what we're going to be voting on is the agenda as modified by the proposal? Okay.
Yeah, and I think if we vote yes, then I think board docs will be updated, and that statement, I don't know if you got that, Dave, of what she said, most of it. I guess that would come in there as action item J, and then item K would become executive session and so forth.
Mr. Skidmore, just to be clear, I thought we were following the chart and the percentages as far as any mask mandate goes.
What is up right now is for the to approval of the agenda. The action item can be discussed later on. Right now, we're talking about approving the agenda with the addition.
So is this is an item that Mrs. Parkhurst, so let's have comment from the board before we vote. So we have an item that Mrs. Parkhurst is adding to the agenda. I'm not sure that this has been a recommendation for tonight from our administration. I'm not sure the administration's opposed to that recommendation. I'm not putting words in the administration's mouth, but this is a recommendation that one board member is making tonight that has a pretty significant impact on our district. So,
And and being new to the board too, there might be a policy on this that I'm just not familiar with. You actually in your procedural update kind of covered how board docs works, and we try to get everything published ahead of the meeting. So what's generally, maybe for my benefit, the policy for adding an action item or a resolution at the actual meeting as opposed to doing it, where there's time for, people to attend who know that that's going to be considered at the board meeting?
any more debate? Okay, can you call roll?
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Ross. Aye. Mr. Harrison.
Nay.
Ms. Pavlik.
Nay.
Mr. Skidmore.
No. I make a motion, we approve the agenda as was presented by the administration. That's for tonight.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Any questions or comments from the board?
I think it is disappointing that this board would not even consider putting the action item on the agenda for further discussion. All you had to do was approve the agenda. When it's an action item, that's when we would have discussion for it. The administration did make a recommendation at our last meeting for a full mask mandate. It was option 1. That was voted down. We were proposing it again I'm proposing it based on Governor DeWine's recent conversation that he had with the heads of the 6 big children's hospitals within the state. He was encouraging all school boards to consider having mask mandates to help stop the spread not only of COVID, but other illnesses that are filling up our children's hospitals. We have a responsibility to care for our children, to provide a safe learning environment. Going to restaurants, movie theaters, whatever else people do on their own time is their choice, but children must attend school. And it is our responsibility to provide a free education for them in a safe setting.
Okay.
And I take that responsibility.
But again, we're
Very seriously.
debating, you're going back to what we just talked about. We're debating right now.
I know.
This agenda.
I know.
So you're off topic, okay?
Not
So
necessarily, because it's going to explain how I'm
we
going
already
to vote.
decided this last meeting. Now, we've already voted on it tonight. Now you're still lecturing us, okay? So let's please move on. Okay? We already voted not to put on the agenda.
Mr. President, can you please
Sorry, please
control
don't
the public?
clap. Please don't clap.
Please proceed.
Okay. Please call roll.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Harrison.
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
No.
You're against the agenda? Having an agenda tonight?
That's
And
what
Ms.
this is, the
Parkhurst.
agenda.
You're voting no on approving an agenda.
That's correct.
Ms. Parkhurst.
No.
Okay.
I would like to see the action item added. I don't see why we can't do that.
Okay. All right. And at this point, then we have our superintendent's communication.
Good evening. First thing I'd like to do is invite Tom Delac from our athletic boosters up to the front. If you have not already seen, we've got some amazing new signs in our soccer as well as our football stadiums, and that is in large part due to the support that we receive from our athletic boosters. The support that they provide us is not only for things such as the signs, but also for our athletic uniforms. And I know oftentimes people see the elite things that our students have within athletic programs and wonder where the money comes from in order to make those things happen. And that money is generated through our athletic boosters, and it's the work of our athletic boosters that gives our students and our student athletes the opportunity to have those type of elite opportunities. So, Tom, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Sorry, Mr. Dulac. I think you're on now, hopefully.
How about now? There we go. Thanks for the introduction and the time. I'm going to make it very brief. Just wanted to make sure it was public knowledge for everyone. Our first annual down payment for the scoreboard was made a few weeks ago. And as Mr. Sable said, we're very excited about those new signs. In addition, Mr. Hotke is going to receive our annual $50,000 donation for uniforms. He'll be receiving that this week. And we are announcing the winner of the car raffle at the homecoming football game. Numbers are still unofficial, but we're up over 30,000 for that fundraiser this year. So Mr. Skidmore said Medina's a great community. I'm confirming that. Our business sponsors, our families, the support of the district and the board, greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Tom, thanks for all you do. I know we have one of the best boosters organizations around, and you guys, the partnership you have with the district and with how you've helped raise funds through the private sector for things like the scoreboard and other projects and the different, at the junior high with the new basketball court and different things with the donation from Amy Hose and from other people that have been so kind and generous through the years. And we appreciate you standing up for the district and all the hard work you do. And we just can't say thanks enough. Thanks for all you do.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and the board as well. I'm just the lucky guy who gets to come to the meeting, so thank you very much. Any other questions or anything? Or?
Tom, I just also wanted to add that the scoreboard is amazing, and the sound system, there's a huge difference in attending those games. It's fantastic, so thank you so much for all that you guys do.
Yeah, sure thing. Friday night, if you want to come to a place with a lot of energy and unity, be there Friday night at the football game. Fun times for sure. Good?
Thank you, Tom, and the athletic boosters. Next up, I just wanted to remind everybody that we've got our homecoming weekend coming up. All this week, our high school is celebrating homecoming weekend with themes throughout the week. This was something that wasn't able to happen last year, so it's nice walking through the high school today and seeing the hallway competitions and themes. The main hallway I walked through, they have Monopoly up. So it's nice to see our kids back engaged. We do have the homecoming parade that's going to be happening on Friday. We do have some adjustments to that due to COVID. It's going to be limited to our high school students this Friday. We do want to make sure that this event is available for our high school students, so our athletes as well as our high school court will be participating in that. In addition, we've worked with the health department as well as surrounding districts to make some adjustments with the homecoming dance. Right now, we're hoping for good weather, and the plan is to have the dance outside in the stadium. If the dance cannot happen outside in the stadium due to poor weather, it'll move into the gym with a mask mandate within the gym. So we're really hoping for good weather. Today was beautiful. Hopefully that weather will continue through Friday. Number 3, I briefly want to talk about our next work session. Obviously, there's been some procedural adjustments to this board meeting per board policy. I did want to make some recommendations to the board that we carry that forward into our upcoming work session. I do have concerns about the board's ability to conduct regular business. Typically, and for those of you who don't regularly attend meetings, our work sessions aren't operated like this. They're the board actually working together and collaborating on district business. In the last few months, in working through the COVID concerns, that's been a bit disrupted. We do have important business with academics and our students, and I am hopeful that we'll be able to get back to those discussions and the reasons why our board members were elected. So it is my recommendation for the upcoming board meeting that we do not allow for public participation, which per board policy, we do not have to allow for at a work session because it is a working meeting of the board. In addition to that, I would also recommend that we do not live broadcast the meeting, which we have never done before. We began doing when COVID started to make those meetings available because people couldn't attend. People are able to attend the work sessions. I still do think we should record those and make those meetings available after the fact on our website. So I'd like to have further conversation with board members as we move forward into our next work session. But we do have some important things coming up with redistricting. We do have a residency survey going on to see what our enrollment's going to be looking like in the future. That got held up due to COVID, so they're redoing that for us to make sure we have accurate numbers. We also need to discuss things like potential bond issues as well as levies down the road. We've talked about facilities and did facility surveys a couple years ago before COVID started. We're going to be planning on pulling the community back together and having discussions about the facilities to see what kind of support there is now. We're not going to assume that the support is what it was prior to COVID. So those are all important things that we need to have discussions about, as well as wrapping up our strategic plan, which we're wanting to present to the board formally for adoption coming in the new year. And the last thing I have is our regular COVID update, and I do have a couple things that I want to share with the board before I turn it over to Dr. Kwolek to share our updated numbers. I'm sure the board is aware that with our percentage system, we do have an additional building this week that went into a mask mandate, and that is Northrop. We did see some improvement in some of our other buildings. As a district overall, we did not see a big decrease in our COVID numbers. We saw a shift in the COVID numbers across the district in the buildings that they were occurring. In terms of our work with the health department, as I've shared in previous meetings, we have shared with them concerns in regards to managing the contact tracing. They have now assigned a nurse from the health department, and if they haven't started today, they will be starting work in the district within the next week or so in the contact tracing process, and they'll be working directly with our school nurse as well as Dr. Kwolek through that process. So I'm excited for us to have that increased assistance, and I think that's something that the board has definitely asked for at previous meetings. So we are making progress. So Dr. Kwolek, if you could please share our statistics.
Ryan, if you could put our chart up. I guess there's a couple things I want to caution everyone about before we start to look at this, and that's, I know Mr. Sabo and I have been talking One thing we always want to look for is correlations, but I guess I want everyone to know, just because you see a correlation doesn't mean you can immediately look for a causation, and that's on either side. So we tried to add some notes in here, and that's not to just immediately assume because a rate's going down that our mask mandate is necessarily causing that, or just because you see a rate going up to immediately assume that because a mask mandate isn't in place that that's what's causing it. So there's so many variables at work here. We just don't want the public to use our data to make assumptions about things. So I put some notes at the bottom, we put some notes at the bottom, that this data is only 1 week of a mask mandate at certain buildings. So again, we don't want people to immediately assume if you see a decrease at Root, for example, that that means our mask mandate was the reason for that, because only 1 week was that mandate in place. So again, I'll start to share this, but I just wanted to start off by saying that for sure. The other thing to note is that this is a 2-week average. So I had someone reach out and say, how can it be 2.5 students? And it's because we take the 2 weeks of data and then divide by 2. So it was really 5 students, and then when you divide by 2, you get 2.5. So everyone can look as well. The only other point I would give you is you may see different enrollment numbers. We have a lot of variability in our student enrollment, and so every Friday I pull the enrollment at each building. So if you see a difference in enrollment at a particular building, it's because every Friday we pull the enrollment numbers for that building. So as Mr. Sable shared, you can see Canavan remains above the 3% threshold. Garfield remains above the 3% threshold. Northrop is now above the 3% threshold, and as he shared, Root is now at 3.46%, so below the 8% threshold. So if they are again below that threshold next week when we send out our email, then they would come off the mask mandate. So I don't know if the board has any questions about that data.
Dr. Kwolek, the data doesn't really reflect, though, what's going on in the classroom, correct? Like, I guess I'm wondering, do we have classrooms where there's a lot of students out because there was an outbreak in a classroom, and now we're trying to figure out how we're educating those students?
So I think what you're asking is if we have specific classrooms with a lot of students out? Is that what you mean?
I'm sorry?
Do you mean, do we have a specific classroom with a lot of students out?
Right, I would think that at the elementary level that the cases might be confined to one classroom or several classrooms, or is that the case, or are they sporadic throughout the building so we're not seeing large classrooms impacted by a large number of students being out?
So at this point, that would be a question for the health department, but at this point, at our level, I don't know that we've seen a specific classroom with a large number of students out. We did initially with the case at Blake, but I don't know that in particular I can think of another class where large number, meaning to me, maybe half or more of the students out in one particular classroom.
Thank you.
I just have one quick question. The enrollment numbers that fluctuate, could you explain why or how they would fluctuate? Because that was my one question I had for you before.
Sure. So we have students that move in and out of the district on a daily basis because we're a large district. Families move in and out. So it's not going to be hundreds different, but it will be 20 to 30 different. And maybe at your middle school and high school, a little bit more than that.
Dr. Kwolek, at the last meeting, we had the sheet was presented a little bit differently. And right now, it looks like the first column there represents quarantine and COVID absences. Is there a scenario where we could go back to see those broken out? It just is a little bit more helpful, I think, to track the numbers of cases and then the number of quarantines that they're leading to. In my mind, those aren't necessarily equivalent absences. And I think it's helpful to see those.
Right. So here's how we're presenting the data right now. So every day, if your child goes to a particular building, you get sent a notice if there's a positive at your building, and then in your classroom, and then you get a call if you're contact traced. Then we were also asked to present the number of quarantines. So every Monday, we send out the district quarantines as well, and then every Friday, we send out the positive cases. So then in addition, we send this out because the board had asked the impact of COVID on number of absences, and so that's how you came up with your percentages. So I can you'll know the number of cases based on the Friday report that you get. So that's, the percentage of this is derived by the number of students out of school. Does that make sense, Mr. Chairman?
That does,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. And so, because I think when I looked at the case count, and maybe Mondays are up, I haven't seen the current cases now. Do we know the current
The
case?
number of quarantines?
No, the number of current case, 64, I think was Friday's number.
17.
Yeah, so Friday, yeah. Which, I don't want to be wrong, but I think the number of active cases at the time of our last board meeting was maybe 110 or 112. It does, but my point is that trending in a good direction? Is it trending in a bad direction? Is it flat? That's what I'd like to know, I guess.
I think both cases and quarantines are trending in a good direction, but the purpose of this chart is to share how many students are missing school, whether they're quarantined or positive. I think that's what the board had asked for, to indicate how many kids aren't in the building due to COVID. And so
Right.
that was what the percentage was based upon, if I understood the board correctly.
So this is the tracking sheet for changing the mask mandate, toggling it on and off based on the policy that was adopted at the last meeting?
Correct.
Makes sense, thank you.
So again, just to clarify that at Heritage, using Heritage as an example, there are 3 students who have either tested positive for COVID or have been quarantined. Is that correct?
So there are 3 students average over the last 2 weeks. So there could have been 1 the first week and 5 the next week. That's 6 divided by 2 would be 3. Because it wasn't fair to base it on just 1 week. We wanted to give you a longer projection, because if 1 week was 1 and the next week was 5, it's a little bit more consistent to give you a 2-week average.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sable and Dr. Kwalik, for the update and the numbers. And our next agenda item is our treasurer communication. Mr. Chambers?
Yes, thank you. Back in January, we started a process of converting our financial system from a system that was built in 1976 to a system that was built about 5-6 years ago. This process has led us to payrolls being processed. I think we're on our 5th payroll being processed from July, and we are somewhat processing payables and other checks going out to our vendors. As such, I don't have the financials today because we're still in the process of trying to close out August. So it's been tedious for this month, and hopefully by the end of September, I'll be able to get you both August and September financials. But today I'll be talking about the permanent appropriations. I presented the permanent appropriations for the 21-22 school year. In that listing, you have the general fund, which is our main operating fund. The general fund, I'm comparing to last fiscal year, the final appropriations, we're up 1.6%. This is $1.2 million. Last year, we ended roughly $79.9 million. The next item down is your emergency levy. Your emergency levy is up roughly 6.1%. It's up $544,000. Between the emergency levy and the general fund, that is our 5-year forecasting numbers. And as a whole, the 5-year forecast with the appropriations here are up only 2.6%. We have our principals fund, it's up $150,000 from last year. Our employee benefit fund is down $1.4 million. Looking at it, this is all based on what was spent last year in our employee benefit fund, so we're looking at this as a good thing. We will come back to that at the end of the year here. Our sales tax fund is up $273,000. Our auxiliary funds are down $80,000. Auxiliaries are based on numbers of students, and they use last year's numbers. St. Francis has told me that they are down students this year, while the Medina Christian Academy is up students. So it's been a good year for Medina Christian Academy. Our 467 fund, Student Wellness and Success, that is last year's monies carried over. We could carry those over as long as possible. However, the state went and, in their infinite wisdom, decided to put student wellness funds into the foundation. Now, you and I both know anything that's in the foundation is then reduced by the local taxpayers. So our local share is around 70%, and as the years go by, if this is still in there, then it will be reduced, and we will see lower monies for our student wellness funds. Our ESSER funds, these are this is our second round and third round of COVID monies that we received from the state. Last year, we received roughly, I want to say a total of $700,000. We used the COVID relief monies for our computers that we issued to make us one-to-one. Ryan, I know you're happy about that. And then we also used monies last year for Apex online learning and online subscriptions. At the end of the year, we used it for upgrades for electrical, for air conditioning, and custodial and instructional supplies. This year, our ESSER funds, we're looking at using them again for upgrades for air conditioning. We started because we do all our upgrades here during the summer when the students are gone, so we use these funds here. We're also using it for portable units and HVAC units itself and window units. I believe we also have more computers for Ryan. Thank you, Ryan. And we will be going, I believe that's a portion of it. And then finally, I believe Tina has these ESSER monies used for instructional and supplies for professional development. So we have our title funds. Our title funds, these are a combination of last year's monies and this year's monies, new monies. And then we have a new fund out there. Actually, it's a replacement fund. 584 replaces 599. Why they moved it, I can't tell you. You know, it's something that the state decided was best interest for all schools. And then the 599 fund, this is the carryover monies itself. And so once September 30th comes around, we'll do a final expenditure report on all of our carryover monies from last year and get them off the books. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. And the next item is board communication. Maybe we'll go around the horn. Val, do you have anything? Want to go last? Okay. Ron, do you have anything?
I just wanted to thank our staff. I think they've been dealing with a lot in just a short time. We've been back in session. I appreciate everything they're doing, and they need all the support from us, and I'm just hoping we're stepping up and supporting you. So just want to thank you for everything you're doing for our kids and for this community. Thank you.
The District Curriculum Committee met last week, and we were informed that the Ohio Department of Education has updated the state report cards again. They've changed the rating system from letters to stars, and the district should be getting our report card, I believe, around October timeframe. Good news in that teaming is back after, I believe, a 10-year hiatus. So it was very exciting to learn that Root and Claggett have a teaming model. I think it's Teaming 2.0 is the model. I do want to thank the teachers, MCTA, for working with our administrators. They really fought to get teaming back, and it's not the teaming that it was 10 years ago. They really reinvented it and worked with our administration to come up with something that will work for our district right now. Without costing us a lot of extra money. So I praise them for their efforts with that. I wanted to remind everyone that we do have the maker spaces back in our buildings. I feel that didn't get the credit that it should when Dr. Tadona was here at the last meeting talking about the high school maker space, because it really is a big thing to have that, and that's our final building to have that. So that's another great thing for our kiddos, now that they are back in the buildings, to have those. And the last thing, I just wanted to inform the board that there is an independent Ohio Schools COVID-19 evaluation that was released in January of 2021 that does show the effectiveness of masks in preventing the spread of COVID-19 in the classrooms.
Sorry, order, please.
And that is on the Ohio Department of Health coronavirus.ohio website. I encourage the board members to take a look at that. It is, our administration is doing a lot from that chart that Dr. Kwolek showed us to track our absences, track our percentages. If we just had a across-the-board mandate, we wouldn't have to be doing that to see if we meet that nebulous threshold. We would have absences, but we wouldn't have to spend the time tracking like we do. Our administrators and teachers and everyone could do what they're here to do, which is teach our kids. And last to note, if you look at, they've posted districts, what their mandates are, and I believe it's 52 or 58% have a full mask mandate in place. We are in the 30-some percentage that have a partial, so we're not leading in that. So I just hope that the board considers that as we start to approach the flu and cold season and as things get worse, that we consider what we're doing and take our responsibility of serving our community, all members of our community, the way that we should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. I guess I'll jump in, and then we'll keep going down the line. A couple of the emails that we got after the last meeting, some were complimentary that you know, I had the luxury of chairing this thing and running through it, but a couple were critical, and I think from the standpoint, some of them that were critical said, why do we have people from outside of Medina speaking that don't live in our district at our meetings? And I think we had probably 4 or 5 emails that asked that question. And so I think that's something that the board would probably want to consider looking into, that we would have the policy committee look at that, especially since we have a limited amount of time for public speakers. We really want taxpayers that live in Medina City Schools District. Obviously, we're not changing that tonight or anything like that, but I think that's something that Becky and I sit on the policy committee with the administration, and that's something that we'll be looking at as we update our regular policies, I think, in the future. We're not obviously making that change tonight, but it does seem like when you only have 30 minutes for public speakers that you probably don't want people from Colorado talking about what should go on at Medina schools or wherever they're from. So, okay, I don't know who that was, but okay, you're out, okay? Could you escort him out, sir? Please escort him out. Okay, and so I understand the debate on masks. I understand the comments that Mrs. Parkhurst has made. I understand that there's a lot of opinions on the masks. I do believe that the policy that the administration has come up with is working. I think that, and I guess my rhetorical question, which I'm not asking anybody to answer, is if you enact masks, at what point will the mask mandate come off? When there's one person with COVID in the state or the county, at what point? So if you have a mask mandate for everybody, at what point will it go away? And I think nobody can clearly answer that question. And so I think that's the fear, is that we want to balance freedoms. And I understand, I'm sure we're going to have comments, you know, tonight that are very good and very scientific, although a lot of the science I read that these things don't keep 100% of the particulate, the COVID coming through. I see that N95 are much better. I don't see too many people that go around with N95 masks, but I see people with single-layer cloth masks and other things. It's better than nothing, and I don't disagree that they don't work, but some of these regulations just don't always make sense. And somebody was telling me about a casino in Las Vegas that has a mask mandate, but they allow you to take your mask off if you're smoking at a machine. So imagine that. That doesn't seem to make any sense because smoking is not helpful, but you can take your mask off if you're smoking in Las Vegas at a machine. So some of the people that write these policies are way out of whack. And I think that's part of where everybody's coming from with this. It's not that we want to see anybody get COVID. Nobody wants to see anybody have COVID. And everybody should be as safe as possible with it. And I think those were some of the things that we said last time, but I'll go ahead and pass it on. Mr. Harrison?
Thank you. I just want to note, last week on Monday, so it was a week ago today, I completed my district tour kind of as part of my orientation to the board. It was really great to see everything that's going on in our buildings, and I guess I'd echo Mr. Ross's comments about the staff. There are a lot of things that could be distractions going on, this school year on the heels of the last 2 school years. And I think the universal sense that I got is that we have a very talented staff that's not letting that get in the way of the work they have to do, which frankly has been made a lot more difficult with what's happened over the course of the last 2 years. But they're not letting it get in the way of that work of getting the students back on track. And so that was refreshing to see. I think a lot of the people in this room, we spend a lot of time preoccupied with the COVID issues and some of these decisions that we have to make. And I think anything that our staff is doing and our students are doing where that's on the back burner or in the back seat is helpful for everybody, including the people in this room to maybe take a lesson from. So I frankly found that very refreshing. I also got a chance to meet a few of the building principals and department heads. I did see the makerspace in action at Garfield, at Claggett, and at the high school. And I guess the high school's one is in a temporary spot, getting ready to be moved to its permanent location. But I think that's a great add, just seeing some of the ways that kind of along the lines that the students can have a little bit of a break from whatever else might be going on in their day and experience something new. A lot of students were practicing their sewing skills, which was an interesting thing you wouldn't think would be happening, but they were very entertained by it and amused by it, and also learning something in the process, which I think is the name of the game. So just impressive to see all the hard work that goes into the district operations, all the talented and committed people who are working in spite of all the limitations and challenges we have right now. And then the other thing I attended was a partnership committee meeting with the PTO presidents and the community leaders, and that was chaired by Mr. Sable. And one of the things that was a big takeaway there is the kind of focus on things other than COVID was a big topic of discussion there. And there are a lot of things going on in this district. There's been passing references to redistricting and, just kind of the commitment that we all need to do to keep our eye on the ball as a board, as a community, as an administration, and I know everybody is doing their best to do that, but all the things that are coming in the future, very exciting and promising things coming around the bend at some point. And so I just hope that we can kind of keep the focus on the community, what's best for our students as we move forward into those things, and have time to do that, have the wherewithal to do that in spite of whatever comes out of the long-term effects of the things we've been dealing with here for the last 2+ school years. So those are my 2 updates.
Thank you. I have, where to start? We have been asking for information in our presentations from our health department. We haven't had a chance to have anybody from the health department here, but I just wanted to share with the community and my fellow board members that I look at data. I'm a data person, and I do my research. And reference Governor DeWine's school superintendent's meeting. I have the transcripts right here. And I was reading through it, and I was actually listening to because they have it on a video. And we often encourage our students to use their thinking skills, and when something doesn't seem right, to do their research on it. And something didn't seem right. And Mr. O'Call, in the email that I sent you earlier, could you pull up the screenshot? It's the third link in it, and it is the healthandhumanservice.gov website. Where's he at? Okay. Well, that's the screenshot of the one, but there's a link right above it in that email. If you could pull that up. There we go. So there's a website out there, and it's titled Health and Human Service Protect Public Data Hub, where you can look for any hospital utilization numbers, also known as hospital census data. So in the transcript of this Ohio School Superintendent's meeting, there was the pediatrician chief from UH, Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, and the numbers that were there in the message of the overwhelming numbers. And using this website, you can search for any hospital anywhere, any address, even in the United States and the state of Ohio. So I went and I searched for Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, and they have a total of 34 inpatient ICU beds, and only 13 of them are being used. They have a total of 155 inpatient beds, only 97 are being occupied. So what she was communicating in this superintendent meeting and what the data is, and again, this data is right from the Health and Human Services data, they draw it there. So then I thought, okay, what about Medina General Hospital? And I think, Ryan, in that email, I did include, yes, for Medina Hospital. And right now, Medina Hospital they have a total of 148 inpatient beds, and 118 are being occupied right now. They have 98 inpatient ICU beds, and there are only 13 ICU beds being occupied. This data is pulled as of September 16th. So again, there's information out there, there's databases out there that anybody can pull up this information and verify what you are hearing, whether it be on the news station or whether it be what people are telling the governor. You can vet that information to see whether it's accurate or not. Also, too, there is Ryan, in that second link, there's the ohiohospitals.org/COVID-19 data. And if you go down to the chart, see that state of Ohio, go back up to that state of Ohio, and we are in Region 5. So Region 5, if you click, there you go, perfect. Region 5 is made up of 13 counties, and that includes Summit County as well. So that'll give you the percentages, and if you go down, go ahead and keep scrolling down there. Keep going. Right there. Okay, now go ahead and click on Region 5 again. There you go. And you'll see that the current, on the left-hand side, current week admissions, 9/13 through 9/19, 2021. If you hover over that, the age 0 through 17, it'll show you for the entire state of Ohio the current count of hospitalized children is 158, and in our region, 13 counties, there's only 24. So again, that data, as far, especially when you hear stories about ICUs filling up and overflowing, the hospitals have the beds, they don't have the staff. And that is what the problems are arising as well. But using these websites, you can see for yourself the numbers, and whatever you are hearing, you can go and you can see if that information is accurate. And then there's one more website, and of course, I'm sure all of us know this, the dashboard, the coronavirus dashboard. So, Ryan, that's in the first link in that email that I sent you. I'm sorry. There it is, right there. So this is they've actually been adding to this along the way, and I will give the state credit for that. But using the data, the date ranges, that our spreadsheet, our quarantine cases and our COVID-19 cases, a start date of August 31st, 2021 through the end date of 9/13. So right there you can see the start date. You can put your start dates in there, and you can actually pull it up by county. So if you go down there and you click on the Medina County, scroll down just a little bit more, Ryan. Right there. If you click on the Medina County, the outline of Medina County there, right there, yep. Now go back up to where you can make selections. There you go. Under case classification status, you can pull up all of your total cases, or you can break it out by confirmed cases, or you can break it out by probable. And then towards the bottom, you can also pull it up by ages. So I thought it was kind of neat using the start dates of August 31st through September 13th, that Medina County had 1,483 cases. Of that, 569 were the 0 to 19 age group. However, if you go and you pull up that case classification to just confirmed, which is what we quarantine a student for, is a confirmed PCR test, those cases drop down to 906, and you'll notice that the age group drops down to 310. Out of those cases, if you click on probable is 577 cases, ages 0 through 19 is 259. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that you can also see the hospitalization count. And the reason I say this is because our county health department, a probable case is a COVID-19 case that has exposure to a known confirmed case of COVID and develops symptoms and or a positive antigen test. And that antigen test are those rapid tests. And again, their recommendation is if you get a positive rapid test, you need to have it backed up with the PCR test. So I just want to show you that when you see numbers on the news about so many cases that are being reported per day, you can go to this website, you can vet it. There is some day delays on there, but you can also see that the reporters are grouping in all those probable cases as well as confirmed cases and just giving you that total number. So again, I'm a data person. I want to have a good grasp on what this is. Again, we quarantine a student based on a confirmed test, but there's a lot of information out there if you go out there and you look for it. So I just want to make sure that my fellow board members understand that I'm making my decisions based on the data, and that data has to support that. So that's all I wanted to share with you folks. Oh, and one more thing, I'm sorry. And Ryan, I did send you that last link. The FDA.gov has some interesting information out there on masks. The comparison between the N95 respirators, surgical masks, face masks, and coverings. I would encourage everybody to take a look at that and see, especially with those N95s, if you're wearing an N95, you shouldn't have any facial hair because, again, the N95 is supposed to be a seal. It states right there, it's single use only, that they are supposed to be disposed of in plastic, and then you wash your hands after it. It tells the difference between, again, the N95, the face mask, and the surgical masks. And again, which ones are meant to help block large particle droplets, keeping from reaching your mouth and nose. It does not filter or block very small particles in the air that may be transmitted. And again, this information is all out there on the FDA.gov website, so I encourage everybody, including my fellow board members, to go out and read that information. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Valerie. We're about an hour and 5 minutes into the meeting. I think we'll do a 5-minute recess and then come back on. Okay? I'm calling a recess. After those that have registered have spoken, if time allows, the board president will ask for public participation from all other attendees. Please state your name, address, and affiliation. Please keep comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. No other person may address or question board members individually. Also, the presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's comments when the comments are too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, off-topic, antagonistic, obscene, or irrelevant. I believe that pretty much falls in there. I think I needed to update the board docs, but, okay, so we have our first speaker over here. If you could please state your name and address for the record. Oh, I'm sorry, 1 second. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm Becky Prentice. I live at 6399 Hooper Drive in Medina. First, I'm a parent of Medina students. First, I would like to address, I know I can't address anyone individually, but in regards to the data that was just presented about Medina Hospital, I can assure you this is just another example of how people mean well and they look for numbers on a screen, but that's not how it is in real life. At Medina Hospital, I believe that you stated that there were 98 ICU beds. I can assure you there's 12. There always have been 12 for the 17 years that I've been there. It's interesting that the number of critical ICU patients that you stated was either 13 or 19. I didn't hear that specifically, but we have 12. So if we have more than 12, which we have had, they're boarding in the ER, or there's patients on the floor. I think that possibly they're speaking to, we can put telemetry monitors on more beds, but we have 12 ICU beds, and we have been full, I assure you. We move patients in, we move patients out, trying to take the most sick. We have patients on the floor that should be in the ICU. So please, I urge you to reach out to our hospital to learn more, because your numbers are very flawed as often. And also, the beds that are there, you're asking the wrong question. It's not how many beds we have available. It's not how many are filled, it's how many are available, because they're on isolation. I don't know about you, but if I go in to get my gallbladder out, I don't want to be in a cohort room with a COVID patient. So sometimes we have beds that are blocked because, guess what, there's a lot of COVID at Medina Hospital. So I'll get to what I had prepared, actually, and I'll probably run out of time, but that's okay. Our patient population, now that you know that I work at Medina, is changing, and it's becoming much younger. We are admitting parents to the ICU. Some have been very active, others may have conditions. I know everyone loves to ask me, well, isn't everybody that gets sick with COVID, don't they have aren't they fat, or aren't they, don't they have conditions? And I'm telling you that Delta doesn't care. We are seeing fit, healthy, active people that go to the gym every day. I honestly can't predict who comes to my unit, how they're going to do. Right now, we are admitting parents, and it is our duty to protect them, our Medina families. I'm seeing parents roll into my ICU, and it's very startling. And the looks on their faces, they're scared, they're in shock, they're in disbelief. And we have a lot of patients that are not doing well. One of our patients has 3 little girls at home. We helped him FaceTime his family the day he was intubated last week. A mom from an adjoining school district recently told me on admission that lots of kids at their school have COVID, and most of those parents aren't testing their kids. We flew her out, hoping she would be a candidate for ECMO.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for all you do at the hospital. We appreciate it. Okay, our next speaker is James Stanton. James, is he here? Okay, he's coming up, approaching the mic. And the speaker after that is Julie Stanton. So Julie, if you want to cue as well. Please, go ahead.
My name is James Stanton. My address is 5458 Coverdale Way, Medina. For those of you who could not hear, that patient died at the end of Rebecca's comments. I'm a father of 3. My youngest is a kindergartner in the district. My oldest is the kindergartner in the district, and my youngest is 6 months old. They are unable to be vaccinated against a virus that is surging in our country, state, and most alarmingly, our community, which I'm sure you're aware has been cited as among the most impacted school districts in the state. Children whose interests you represent are among the most vulnerable and unprotected. I, like so many others, was dismayed and shocked at the level of discourse shown at your last meeting. This is not and should not be about politics, as it's not a political issue. The discussion needs to be centered around facts informing sound policy to keep our kids safe and keep our kids in school. If you feel, like I'm sure we all do, I would do anything to keep my kids safe, prove it. The time to act is now. No one likes masks. No one wants to wear them. Legal precedent and many among us recognize that challenges in the community require us to take on a minor, temporary inconvenience for the greater good of community health, as is the responsibility of all citizens in a community. A common refrain in this debate is do your own research. Decide for yourself. Is your research a YouTube video or a Facebook live stream, or is it one of the at least 41 peer-reviewed scholarly articles that support the efficacy of masks? I trust the experts who have dedicated their lives to the study of these issues and protecting our communities. 6 children's hospitals in the states recently signed a joint statement begging for our schools to require the wearing of masks. The very people we will ask to save our kids' lives are saying this is a necessary step before they have to ration care for kids with COVID or any other child in the need of medical attention for any reason. Since July, cases of COVID-19 in children are up 240% nationally and 2,000% in Ohio, Medina being among the worst school districts for transmission. In Ohio, 16 days with the highest number of cases for kids 5 to 17 all were in the last 19 days. Those 3 days that were not the worst were not counted because of Labor Day. The time to act is now. Transmission rates are slowed by mask wearing. In districts where masking is required for even part of the student population, the week-to-week increases are 20% less on average compared to masking optional districts. This information isn't from Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. It is from the published statements from the best children's medical leadership in the country. The facts are clear. Masking works and in the best interest of our children's education and health. It keeps kids in school, parents at work, local businesses open, and makes our community safer. If you would do anything to protect our kids, prove it by taking the most simple, effective, and least invasive measure possible.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Next speaker, we have Julie Stanton.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Julie Stanton, and I also live on 5458 Coverdale Way here in Medina. I'm a mother of 3, and I'm also a high school teacher. I am here to voice my support for a mask mandate. We as a district must consult sound science. I, like my husband, was embarrassed by the last meeting. I know that this is not what Medina is, and I know that the vocal minority is not a representation of the parents of Medina. There are a great number of us who do support masking, not only to protect our students, but also to protect the greater Medina community. There are many reasons that I support masking. It works. It's also a recommendation from the CDC. They recommend universal masking for kids in K through 12 schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends masking for schools. Simply put, it works. I teach in a district where we have universal masking, and our number of cases are extremely low compared to Medina. I can go to work and not worry about bringing home COVID to my 6-month-old baby who does not have the ability to be vaccinated. I appreciate the information that was made available about hospital beds, but that does not mean that I want my child or any other children in Medina to fill those beds. I don't think that we should always have to look to the exact numbers of statistics. We should look at the individuals, and I know that you guys as educators would not want to see these children sick in a COVID ward or to have children die. I would also like to respond to the concern that was shared by Mr. Skidmore about when does masking end. And I appreciate that because I understand that you have this balance that you're playing. But I also would like to say that it ends when our children can receive the vaccine. My son is 6. He goes to Blake. He cannot protect himself. He does not have immunity to COVID. And right now, masking and universal masking is what will help him.
Mr. Skidmore, I'm having a hard time hearing the speaker because of the crowd.
Okay, yes, please refrain from outbursts. Please, was that the end of the time? Go ahead and add 5 more seconds, please, go ahead.
Could I have 30 more seconds, please?
I'm sorry?
May I have 30 more seconds, please?
No. You have 10 seconds, please proceed.
I would just like to say that should we also, this is not an infringement on anyone's liberties. Are they also unduly burdened by wearing pants, by stopping at stop signs? Should we also stop protective equipment for our football players? Should we also not require cafeteria workers to wash their hands? There are things that we can do to protect our...
Thank you. All right, next, Stacy Benny.
Hello, I'm Stacy Benny, and I live at 3847 Knott's Landing, Medina, next to Chief Kenny. Thank you. Earlier today, I emailed the 5 members of the Board of Education and Superintendent Sable the online petition that was started last week. You will see that the vast majority of the 1,115 people who signed the petition are from the Medina area, are from the Medina district, and are voters in the district. These signers want their children to have consistency and remain in school. These signers want their children safe. I believe that a community can be judged by how it treats its most vulnerable members. As someone living with cystic fibrosis, which is a terminal lung disease, I have been a disability advocate for my entire life, and I continue that role here today. Children with disabilities have been impacted more severely by the pandemic than their healthy peers. Oftentimes, remote learning isn't effective or even possible for these children. These children matter, and I'd like to introduce you to a few of them. Corbin is a little boy that you may have seen on the news this week. He has very complex medical issues. He uses a G-tube to eat. He has multiple heart anomalies and will eventually need to have heart surgery. Corbin cannot get the services he needs at home. He needs to be in a classroom. Corbin needs his students, his schoolmates to mask. There is a boy in our district who can't fight bacteria, and there's actually a girl also who can't fight bacteria. When they get fevers, they need IV antibiotics and monitoring. They need their schoolmates to wear masks so they don't get COVID, but also so if they need to go to the hospital for routine care, that their bed is available, that a bed is available for them. There's a young boy in our district named Elijah. He's 9 years old. Elijah has Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome have 4 times higher chance of being hospitalized with COVID and a 10-time higher chance of dying from COVID. Elijah has a brother who attends Medina City schools. Elijah's family needs their schoolmates to mask for him. I want to finish with a quote from Bill Bullard, who's a Republican member of both houses of the Michigan legislature. He died last December 18th from COVID-19. Opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. For a moment, I would ask you to put yourselves in the shoes of the parents of the children that we just met above. These children's lives matter.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Victoria Drulli, and then after that is Michelle Camus, I believe. Victoria Drulli. Thank you.
Ready?
Please,
Okay.
please, no comments while she's speaking, please. Victoria?
My name is Victoria Drewley. I live at 896 Laurel Glens Drive. I have heard a lot of you say, I've heard a lot of administrators say that they really want to get back to business and they want to stop talking about COVID and that there's a lot of other business to discuss. And we heard some mention tonight of redistricting and other things going on in our community. And one of the big things about redistricting is equity. And since I moved to Medina, there's been a big discussion about equity because it's quite apparent that we have an SES issue that runs along our elementary school lines. And I think that that's really relevant to the situation that we're in right now with COVID, because we want to talk about equity in our schools. Well, what about equity for our students? Because equity doesn't mean equal. You all know this, I hope. Equity means that everyone gets what they need, and everyone's needs are different. And part of that is making sure that our most vulnerable are protected. Those of us that have the most needs get what they need in order to succeed. Now, I have a kid, he's autistic, and getting him on an IEP was a nightmare. The resources are available if you know how to get them, but it's tough. It is a very tough system to navigate because the burden of need is put on the parents. So what we have right now is, I'm very fortunate that my kid is not medically fragile, but my niece is, and there's plenty of other kids in our community who are medically fragile, and they have needs that aren't being met for them to have equity in the system. And one of these kids, my niece, she has Angelman syndrome. She legitimately cannot wear a mask. She will not keep a mask on. So she is a child among us who cannot wear a mask. She needs her peers to be masked. She cannot go to an unmasked classroom. She has a note from an accredited neurologist, an actual doctor who studied medicine and is qualified to determine what she needs and what's best for the healthcare system. And they said that until she is vaccinated, it is unsafe for her to be in school. She currently receives PT and OT virtually, and I'm sure you can imagine how effective that is. After we're going on 2 years of this happening, it's not a great situation to be in. And the other thing that we like to talk about are all the legal issues surrounding this. And I gotta tell you, kids not getting educated is a huge legal issue. And to the people who say that she should stay home because her mother's scared or because she's in danger, I would say that doesn't sound like equity, and it doesn't sound compassionate. And my time is up, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, and we have Michelle Camus.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Camus, as you just heard, and I live at 3325 East Smith Road in Medina. I came here tonight really to express my support for the petition. I signed the petition and I support a mask mandate. I understand and appreciate that you all are in a very difficult position. There are people with varying opinions with great intensity on all sides. I do want to say I send my daughter, my 7-year-old, to Sidney Fenn Elementary every day, and I have a hard time accepting that this is a political opinion. Public health is not opinion. The AAP, the CDC, and countless epidemiologists whose life is to study infectious disease, they recommend masking in schools, and that's because the Delta variant is a different animal than the strains that were around a year ago. It's more contagious to kids. It is more contagious to all of us. Kids are affected by it, for sure, and none of us know whether it's going to be our kid or a kid's best friend or a kid's teacher, the principal in the building, who ends up in the ICU. Putting a mask on, to me, is not a threat to my parenting rights. I'm happy, more than happy, for her to learn the lesson that she needs to take actions as a lucky person who is not medically fragile to protect others in the community who might be more susceptible to a virus. In closing, I would just like to say, we don't know a lot about COVID. I will admit, we don't know if masking necessarily and automatically protects people. We don't know that. But I think given the evidence from the medical community, the experts, as well as, just our governor, our government, that it makes more sense and it's more wise to err on the side of caution and to do everything that we can, the only things that we know how to do to bring these cases down and to prevent spread in the schools so that our kids can stay there all year long. Thank you.
Thank you. And looks like next we have an Angela Wish and River Rock Way, and then the next person after that is Mr. Scott Quaid. So if you want to queue.
All right, let's see. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Angela Wish on River Rock Way. I am a Medina City School parent that would first like to request on behalf of hundreds of parents at home watching this that we have a virtual option or some alternate option to participate in these Medina School District Board meetings going forward. Secondly, we need every child to have a safe environment to learn in, and we can all agree that the best learning environment for these kids is in-person schooling. Now, I'm a science and math kind of person, and there is both ample evidence showing that a combination of universal masking indoors, social distancing, increased ventilation, and improved central filtration indoors will dramatically reduce the concentration of COVID infectious aerosols in the air we breathe. And every type of expert in the science, public health, and medical fields, including our children's hospitals, along with Governor DeWine, are overwhelmingly pleading with us to mandate indoors. See it for yourself. If you compare the COVID positive cases in students during the first 2 weeks and then 4 weeks of school in Northeast Ohio's larger school systems, you too will see, come to the same conclusion that I did. Medina school children that started the year with optional mask mandates have experienced 2 to 10 times more positive cases than those school districts that started with a mask mandate in place on day one. I would be happy to provide you some information I've collected as a follow-up. That doesn't even touch on the quarantine counts in comparison. Needless to say, masks work and to slow the spread and keep more children in school. Now, I did not say stop the spread, I said slow the spread. It is additional level of protection to slow the spread of COVID. I will agree with others, COVID is here to stay, but we cannot, and there is no public health option to just let us run rampant. Slowing the spread of the community overall will also keep our hospital systems from being overrun, which should be concern for everyone in this room. The best way to ensure minimal spread in our schools is to deploy all levels of protection we know work: universal masking indoors, social distancing, sanitation, and increased ventilation and filtration. As a district, we mask mandate would make the following: 1, keep our kids in school consistently; 2, ensure less disruption in the classroom; 3, provide more education to our kids; and 4, provide a mask mandate provide a universal rule to apply to all kids in all buildings, not this checkered, confusing mask mandate dependent on percentages that opens itself up for more criticism and attempts to find loopholes versus just going a straight mask mandate from the get-go. Please consider.
Thank you. And then the next speaker, Mr. Quaid, and then after Mr. Quaid, we have a Stephanie Dixon. If you want to queue.
Hello, my name is Scott Quaid, Hartman Road. Been a teacher here in Medina for 33 years. I had a plan to speak, and then in the first couple minutes of the board meeting, I got up and I walked out, and then I walked back in. I walked out because I was angry at how the agenda item was handled. And then I walked back in because I thought, that doesn't mean I shouldn't say something. There's a lot of passion in this room, and that's good. It's actually perhaps the only thing that binds us all together here. We have a variety of perspectives on the science, on the numbers, on the efficacy of masks, on the rights versus mandates. Those things aren't going to be resolved tonight. Those things may never be resolved. Now, as a debate coach, I have my students write cases on both sides of every resolution. And that's very difficult for them sometimes, because sometimes they too are passionate about their perspectives on a given resolution. So what I tell them to do, or what I ask them to do as an exercise, is to prepare a rebuttal against the case that they really believe in. And again, that's hard. It's not an easy class. One thing that makes it easier sometimes is to look at the logic or look at the argument and take it out of the context that makes it invoke such passion. Look at the line of reasoning and put it in a mundane setting. And sometimes then you can sort of analyze how you're thinking. And so if we look at the efficacy of masks, because we did have someone say, well, it doesn't work 100% of the time. No, it doesn't. They don't. We had board members talk about the different types of masks and how some are more effective than others. I would urge us not to let 100% efficacy keep us from doing something good. If we take it out of the context of COVID and just into normal human interaction, if I were to cough or sneeze, again, pre-COVID, I would likely cover my face, or at least turn my head. And if someone were near me and heard me sneeze, they might say, God bless you. I don't think any of us think that any of those things are 100% effective against whatever might fly out of my mouth when I cough or sneeze. But we do it because it's fairly simple and it's kind. Regarding mandates in the last 7 seconds, we do have mandates outside of COVID. We mandate that cars stop for school buses. Out of time.
All right, thanks, Mr. Quaid, appreciate it. Next speaker, Stephanie Dixon. Andy Toth is the last one that's registered in the top 10 there. So we have Stephanie. No, well, you still have 3 minutes, that's it. And if Stephanie wants to speak, she can. So if Stephanie's not going to speak, then we're going to go to the 11th speaker at that point. So Stephanie's next in line. Would you like to speak, Stephanie? Okay, and if you could please state your name and address for the record, Stephanie, and the mic should be on. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I live on Crimson Harvest here in Medina. Obviously, everyone kind of saw how this evening played out. I think we have so much passion and so much drive here in Medina because we have such a wholesome community that can see facts and see what is actually going on with our students and with our kids and understand that a mask is not going to solve anything. I think the president made a great point in the fact that where's the limit? No one can really tell us that. Where's the limit? When we're going to say, oh, Jimmy sneezed, so everyone put a mask back on? No, no one's going to do that. So it's very frustrating, and the fact that there are such little cases. And did anyone ever notice either on all these spreadsheets and all these, whatever you want to call them, they never show, 2 of my kids got sent home on quarantines. No one had COVID. Even the person that they were around didn't have COVID. So why were they quarantined? Why did they get sent home? Don't know, but it makes kids very sad. And no one wants to talk about that. I mean, Dr. Kralik, you had a article.
I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off for a second. You're addressing an individual that's up here on the board. Please address your comments to the entire board and don't call out individual board members. Thank you.
So there was someone who made an article a couple years ago who talked about suicides. I personally would like to see a new article in today's day and age on why kids are being hospitalized, because they're so sad because of everything that is going on. But I would hope that that is a follow-up, because that was a great piece, but it should also be done in today's day and age and step up to the plate. Also, this is kind of off topic, but I'm going to bring it up. The homecoming, great, we're having one this year, but no one's allowed to bring anyone else outside of Medina to a homecoming. I even begged and pleaded for a rapid to be done on a guest to allow them to come to homecoming. That is just so insane that we're limiting it. And to my knowledge, even a couple of kids that play basketball, that help our athletics, help our selves get into the next tournaments and everything, they're not even allowed to come to homecoming. And they play and respectfully get us to the next level, and you're not even letting them come to homecoming because they're homeschooled. That's just wrong. Think of the kids.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Next, Andy Toth. Next.
My name's Andy Toth. You all know where I live.
Please state your address.
Crimson Harvest Line.
Okay.
Here's a recording from the last board meeting.
I'm sorry, we don't have recordings. You can make your comments, but we're not playing recordings.
Okay. From the board meeting on the 7th of last month, it is stated at the 1 hour and 8 minute mark, everybody look it up, that by law, it was mandated by somebody up there from the health department that masks have to be mandated on our children. We all remember the last superintendent. Remember, guys, Randy Stepp? He was terminated for receiving illegal bonuses and payments in the upwards of $300,000 from us taxpayers of Medina County. We all learned to be vigilant, look for any clues that we may have missed last time with a corrupt superintendent. It all starts with dishonesty. Everyone remember that? Senate Bill 22 is what I'm going to focus on today. For those who are wondering what's Senate Bill 22, here's a few important facts. The bill specifically blocks the Ohio Health Department from enforcing, making decisions on mass gatherings, shutting down businesses, school closings, mask mandates, etc. It only allows the lawmakers who pass the bill to enforce these rules. It even overrides Governor Mike DeWine. It prohibits the targeting of our children and sending them home on quarantines or any blanket stay-at-home orders for the entire state. This law actually removes all authority from the same Ohio Health Department that gave somebody, ironically, the okay to do this. So this brings me to the next point. How are we so lucky that we got a superintendent that was given this unique power? Well, let's get real. We can all agree it was a lie. Now he's caught.
Mr. Toth, you're calling out a superintendent directly.
Stop my time. I'm not talking.
The rules say you don't call somebody out.
Okay, I won't say superintendent, but I was at a minute and 45 seconds.
Please address your comments to the entire board, not to individuals up here, okay?
Got it.
You've been warned. That's your first warning. Next time,
Thank you, sir.
we're done with the time.
Sir, yes, sir. This man isn't even trying to hide anything.
Okay, you're done. All right, you're done. That's it.
Okay.
You're done. You're done. Okay, we have time for one more speaker. Michaela Toth would be the next speaker. Michaela Toth would be the next speaker.
Mr. Skidmore, he has been warned.
Please remove him. Please remove him. Okay, the next speaker I have is Michaela Toth. We have just a little bit of time. Is Michaela wanting to speak? If not, okay, Michaela's leaving. And then, looks like a Riley is on there. So Riley's with the same household. I don't know if Riley wants to speak. Then I have a Scott Bell at 220 Highland Drive, and that'll be our last speaker. Scott Bell, 220. Are you Scott? No. Okay, Scott Bell. That's half hour. Scott Bell's over there. Okay, Scott. And that's our last speaker. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Bell, I apologize. We do have one speaker. Here, go ahead.
I live in 3912 Crimson Harvest Lane, and I came here to speak about masks. I've been stuck in masks day and day, and it's been horrible. It's just makes me want to scream. Every day I come home, I complain to my parents that this mask has been ruining my life, and I don't know why they did this. This just makes people's life horrible. And all those kids that just come up to me saying that I'm so lucky that I don't have to wear a mask anymore. It makes me just want to cry because these people are just making these kids wear masks and they don't want to. And they are just being so rude to these poor children that just want to breathe. God made us to help us have a great life. We deserve to breathe. God made us breathe. We should be happy that we shouldn't be wearing masks. I don't know why any of you guys are wearing masks, because you shouldn't do that, because it doesn't help and it makes you worse. Way worse, that it just makes me want to die, because I don't know why people would just do this. It's horrible and it's cruel. And anyone who's wearing a mask right now, I'm telling you, please take it off, because it actually has a vaccine in it that actually makes a lot more people die, and it does not help. So I'm saying, if you are wearing one right now, please take it off, because it's horrible. Please, I'm begging you. All those kids out there is just asking me, take off your mask, please. Everyone just wants to take off their mask so bad, but they know they can't, or else they're going to get in trouble. And most kids don't want that. And I do not know why everyone's wearing a mask right now. It's just horrible. And I say to my teacher, when I grow up, I hope this is not here anymore, else I can't do my dream job. I can't exceed in life. And this just makes me want to cry so bad. Every day I come home complaining to my friends, my dad, that I hate my mask and I don't want to wear it anymore. But I have to. Everyone's making me to. Everyone's bullying me. Hey, why aren't you wearing a mask? You're not like us. Like, come on, God, you're way better than that. Why would you do this to us? I want to not wear a mask anymore. I want to be a free person. I don't know why you guys are doing this. You guys are so cruel. I don't get why. And why did you take my dad off stage? He was pretty much the whole spotlight. And it just makes me want to cry. And why?
Thank you. We're out of time. Thank you for that. We're out of time for public comments. We're going to move on to the agenda tonight. I don't know if the board has board docs pulled up. I know we need to refresh our devices and bring that back up. We'll get back into the meeting here. I appreciate everybody's passion on all sides of this, and thank you to everybody that got up and spoke tonight. All right, so we're back in the agenda. We're down at public participation. We finished that up. Now we have our treasurer's action items. Mr. Chambers.
If it please the board, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the permanent appropriations for the 21-22 school year.
I'll make a motion to accept the action item G, treasurer permanent appropriations 21-22 school year.
I'll second that. Any questions or comments from the board? Please call roll.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Mr. Ross? Aye. Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Sable?
I recommend that the following donations be accepted by the Board of Education to the Medina City Schools. I do want to point out that there are several donations for return to school. So despite the fact that we're going to be heading into October here soon, we still do have several organizations within the community reaching out to support our students. Number 2 is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements for the 21-22 school year. The first is Belfair Jewish Children's Bureau, and this is to provide social emotional services, therapy, and paraprofessional services for students attending Evolve Academy for the 21-22 school year. I do want to remind the board that the Evolve Academy is self-supportive. So the Evolve Academy is paying for these services through their contracts with other districts as well as their contracts with Medina City Schools. PSI Affiliates is with St. Francis Xavier. We are a pass-through for these services since they are a private school. And last but not least, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following personnel items pending completion of all required documentation per the Department of Human Resources.
Okay, so we have action items H, numbers 1, 2, and 3 that we'll take together.
Make a motion to approve action items H, 1, 2, 3.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Ross and Mrs. Parkhurst. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, if you could please call roll.
Mr. Ross? Aye. Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
And then the last one, we have the board action items for the 2 appointments.
Yep, 2 appointments, and this is with Aaron joining our board. We have 2 open committees, and I hear he's volunteered without too much twisting of the arm to accept these appointments. It's recommended that the Board of Education appoint Aaron Harrison to serve as representative of the board of the Medina City Schools Finance Committee, which means he'll be joining Dave and I once a month on the Finance Committee, as well as Ron. Ron's our other Finance Committee member, as well as the OSBA Legislative Liaison. It is recommended that the Board of Education select Aaron Harrison to serve as the OSBA Legislative Liaison, which I think works out well with his legal background for that position.
I'll make a motion to accept action items I.
Second.
1 and 2, with filling in Aaron Harrison in those 2 blanks, obviously, right? Yep, we have a first by Valerie and a second by Mr. Ross.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Actually, I do have a question. I know I probably shouldn't on this, but would this be something I typically abstain from voting on? Or I just don't want to practice it?
It's up to you, but it's
Okay.
not a monetary function at all, and it's just procedural, but that's up to you. Yep. Okay, so hearing, are there any other questions from the board? Hearing none, if you could please call roll.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Ross? Aye. Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
And the next item that we have is executive session. We're still wanting to do that? We think probably? Yeah, we definitely do. We probably should add,
Mr. Skidmore, I would like to add compensation of a public employee to that item.
okay, that's fine, and then, we just got that lawsuit, so we should add whatever we need to add with that. Discussion with board legal counsel, that item. Okay, So we're going to have, I make a motion for executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and discussion with the board's legal counsel of disputes involving of the board, which are subject of pending or imminent court action, unless you can think of anything else we want to put in there. Okay, that's my motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. If you could please call roll.
Mr. Skimmer?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Harrison?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye. Thank you. We're going to go in executive session with the board, Dr. Kwalik, Mr. Sable, and no action will be taken afterwards. And we may call our legal counsel or, whoever else we involve with it. Okay? Thank you.